don't know. We'll see how this goes. This is my first time doing like a standing in front of my camera video in a minute. Hi guys, welcome to Betwixt the Books. It's Michaela. I'm here with a review and an ARC review, and it's on time. What? I read as my very first read of the year, Most Ardently by Gabe Novoa, so says Storygraph. This book is in a loosely curated series of books called Remixed Classics, where classic books are being retold for YA audiences, but with some sort of diversity element added to it. So in this case, Most Ardently is a retelling of Pride and Prejudice, which you may have guessed from the title, but it adds a queer trans element to it that obviously is not there in the original text. It is YA, which I don't read a lot of, but one of the things that I've noticed is that a lot of the lesser represented queer groups are getting some books in YA. There are obviously some other places where you can find books with trans rep, but a lot of the queer books that come out every year are in YA for some reason. I don't know why. This might be something that we should discuss, Gretchen and I, during a discuss episode if we ever do it. But so is the case for this one. It is a YA retelling of Pride and Prejudice with a trans main character. In this case, Lizzie Bennet is actually Oliver Bennet, and he is not out to most of his family at the start of the book. The family members that do know about him is his older sister and his aunt and uncle, and then his closest friend who is a closeted lesbian with a partner who is also a closeted lesbian, and that's it. Those are the only people who know that Oliver is Oliver. Oliver's parents don't know, nothing else. Over the course of the story, we obviously get to see Oliver falling in love with Darcy, Darcy falling in love with Oliver, and then a little bit of an interesting mix with Lizzie, Oliver pretending to be a girl, Oliver pretending to be Elizabeth still at social events, certain things where they also interact with Darcy as a girl, but he is obviously a boy for the most part. My favorite scene comes from this weird thing where Darcy's interacting with Oliver as Oliver when Oliver is dressed as a man and is interacting with the world as a man, and interacting with Elizabeth, who doesn't really exist. When I finished reading the book, I was talking with Gretchen because I was unsure of how I was going to review this one, because I personally am not the target audience. I'm not a young adult person. I am trans in a way as someone who is non-binary, who does have some gender fluid tendencies and has some things, but I'm not trans mask. I'm not someone who very inherently hates how I look all of the time, who needs to dress a specific gender in order to be whole and well most of the time. I do fluctuate along the spectrum, but I'm someone who can empathize with that, obviously, and I wanted to read something that had that representation in it. I ended up giving this one a 4-star, I think, but if it was purely me, probably 3.5-ish. I gave it a 4 because I do think that this book is super important to hand to a bunch of baby trans kids, which is the target audience. And for, I can't rate it lowly because I'm not the target audience. I understand that I'm not the target audience. When I finished it, I was like, this isn't for me, but I know exactly who this is for. And I think that that's helpful. Gretchen and I have talked a lot about how we feel like some YA books are being written for adults because there is such a huge market of adults who read YA, and how that does a disservice to the YA genre, age category, whatever it is, because there are fewer and fewer books being published that are meant specifically for the kids who are meant to be reading these books. And this one very much is that. It is a book that I would hand to baby queer kids, baby trans kids who are trying to figure some stuff out, very much so for them. Most of my complaints as an adult kind of comes from things that maybe stem from it being a retelling of Pride and Prejudice. It's a little bit cliche. But again, if you're a young kid, you may not feel it's as cliche as it is. Having seen so many Pride and Prejudice retellings, it's really hard not to be yep, okay, it's another Pride and Prejudice retelling. And like the queer elements definitely added stuff and added some things that like made me like super happy. One of the things I said in my Storygraph review, like right after I finished it, was my face hurt from smiling because it was cute. And that's one of the things that Pride and Prejudice retellings do all the time. It's like so sweet and so cute and lovely. It is one of the best romances ever written, and there's a reason for that. So like it has the issue of I've read this a million times, but also like if you're a baby person, maybe you haven't read quite as many Pride and Prejudice retellings and it won't feel as cliche for you. I did also say that it was like really nice to read a book that is very much centered in queer and trans joy. While there are elements in here that I could see triggering as like a blackmail of like having to out a trans character or a queer character, that obviously is something that is like a huge stressor on a lot of people and might be triggering for some. It doesn't end poorly, and while it doesn't ignore the stresses of being a closeted queer person, it has a lot of moments where you get to see the pressure and stress and anxiety on some of these characters. It overwhelmingly is positive. The reactions to Oliver coming out are overwhelmingly positive. Sometimes, in my opinion, maybe a little bit unrealistic, but that doesn't mean that this doesn't need to exist. Like, I do think it is good to see representation of people coming out and just being accepted immediately. And people in different ways accepting that, and also like the skepticism at first, but then just the acceptance of it. Like that definitely is something that needs to be there, and not every book needs to be about the trauma of like or your parents hating you when you come out to them. But I again, like part of me is like it's kind of a little bit over the top how accepting it is, especially for a historical book. But again, it doesn't need to be a negative thing, and that's what this was. It was just queer joy, trans joy, and I appreciated that, and also was like, it's maybe a little bit unrealistic. It has this like neutral vibe that's going on. I felt like all of the ways that making Oliver in this book, the way that changed the way the plot of the story or certain events in the story happened, were like very interesting, and also one of my favorite scenes came out of that, which is great. When you're working with something that is so well known and so redone over and over again, it is nice to see some refreshing takes on some of these scenes, and there definitely were scenes that I had not read before, and it was simply because of the way that the queer element was introduced to it. It also definitely had some interesting historical information about like being queer in that time period at the back of the book, as well as like within certain scenes. That was awesome. I really appreciated learning a little bit. Overall, it was like an overwhelmingly positive experience for me. I would recommend it again to any baby queer kids, baby trans kids, like anybody like 12, 13 and up can probably read this one. There's nothing explicit. It, you know, there's the really casual hand hold, the really sweet climactic moment of them holding hands. So it's definitely not going to be abrasive in that way for some younger kids, especially if they're ready to start reading a little bit of romance. Yeah, so I read a book. Yay! I read a book on my own for myself. Yay! I'm reviewing it on time. Yay! Multiple positive things for you guys. I hope this was coherent and like helpful in some way. I still am feeling a lot of anxiety about standing and filming. I did this one on my own. There's no Gretchen. It's just me, so proud of myself for that too. But I'm trying to do a video a week, just like Gretchen does, and not all of them are going to be book reviews, obviously, but some of them will be, like this one, and that's awesome. I'm trying to do more things that I enjoy for myself instead of just staring at a wall for hours, or more realistically, staring at my phone reading fanfiction for hours. I will talk to you guys again soon. See you next week. Actually, yeah. I think we'll see you on Friday, because I'm pretty sure this video comes out the same week as the newest book in the Dark Olympus series, so I think we'll see you on Friday with Gretchen. But next week I will also be here on my own, so I will see you then. I hope you have a lovely, lovely week, and I will see you then. Bye.